A black woman in turn greeted a deaf visitor in sign language, unaware that the CEO was watching every move of her in that marble lobby where corporate hypocrisy shone brighter than the waxed floor. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't understand what you're trying to tell me," said the receptionist with that tone of ill-concealed irritation that privileged people use when they encounter any inconvenience in their perfect routines. The man in the elegant suit gestured desperately, his hands dancing in the air in a language that no one there seemed to understand, his shoulders slumping under the familiar weight of exclusion, that silent defeat that people like him knew all too well. Jasmine Williams, 24, watched the scene from across the lobby as she balanced a tray of expensive coffees for executives who barely knew her name. 3 months as an intern at the prestigious Reynolds Corporation had been enough for her to understand how that world worked. Fake smiles, superficial courtesy, and zero tolerance for anything that disrupted the flow of the corporate machine. But when she saw that man being treated like an inconvenience, something inside her refused to accept yet another injustice disguised as professional protocol, and her feet moved before her mind could reason about the possible consequences. She approached the counter, set the tray aside, and raised her hands with the fluid grace of someone who had spent years perfecting every gesture. "Hello, sir, can I help you?" Her hands formed the words that her voice could not convey in the same way, and his face lit up as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room. "Thank you. I thought no one here would understand me," he replied, his gestures laden with genuine relief. The entire lobby stopped. Conversation ceased. Footsteps slowed, and all eyes turned to this unexpected scene. A black intern conversing fluently in sign language with a visitor whom the receptionist had dismissed as a problem. What Jasmine didn't know was that Lawrence Reynolds, the company's CEO, had just stepped out of the executive elevator and was witnessing every second of that interaction. His gray eyes, known for dismantling seasoned executives with a single glance, now watching with a different intensity, as if he were seeing something he had long sought without knowing. But neither Jasmine nor Lawrence could have predicted that this simple display of humanity was about to unleash the fury of someone who considered any act of kindness a personal threat to her own mediocrity, because across the lobby Victoria Sterling, supervisor of the marketing department, watched the scene with the kind of anger that only insecure people feel when they witness genuine competence. Her eyes narrowed as she calculated exactly how to turn this moment of compassion into a public lesson on knowing your place, not realizing that every cruel word she was about to utter would be remembered with photographic precision by someone who had the power to completely rewrite the ending of this story. Well, what a touching scene. Victoria's sharp voice cut through the lobby like a blade, echoing off the marble so that everyone could hear it perfectly. And in turn playing professional interpreter. How adorable. Jasmine felt the blood freeze in her veins as all eyes in the lobby turned to her, including those of executives who until then had not even known of her existence. Victoria Sterling approached with calculated steps, her heels echoing like a countdown to public humiliation. "Sorry to interrupt this performance," Victoria continued, sarcasm dripping from every word, "but we have protocols in this company. Interns do not interpret for clients. That's what certified professionals are for." The deaf man looked confused between the two women, clearly sensing the tension even without hearing the venomous words, and Jasmine quickly interpreted, "I apologize, sir. It seems I overstepped my bounds." "Exactly," Victoria smiled coldly. "Jasmine, isn't it? 3 months here, and already thinking you're indispensable. How ambitious." The word ambitious came out of her mouth like an insult. Lawrence Reynolds stood motionless near the elevators, observing every nuance of that interaction, his experienced eyes capturing every micro-gesture, every inflection of voice, every demonstration of character revealed under pressure. "Senora Victoria." Jasmine tried to keep her voice steady. "I was just helping he needed." But Victoria interrupted brutally. What he needed was a qualified professional, not an intern who decided to show off to get attention. "Do you think a few hand gestures are going to impress anyone here?" The receptionist smiled discreetly, clearly pleased to see someone else being humiliated for failing to solve a problem she had created, while other employees began to gather, drawn to the public drama like flies to the honey of someone else's misfortune. Jasmine took a deep breath, and something in her gaze changed. For a split second, Victoria might have noticed that this young woman wasn't being broken by the humiliation. She was being forged by it. "I understand your concern," Jasmine said, her voice taking on an unexpected serenity. "It wasn't my intention to cause trouble." Her intention? Victoria laughed loudly. "Honey, you're a 3-month intern. Your intentions are irrelevant. Your job is to bring coffee, make copies, and learn to be invisible until you earn the right to have opinions." The deaf man gently touched Jasmine's arm and signed, "You don't have to apologize for being kind. Thank you for your help." When Jasmine translated his words to the audience, some faces showed genuine discomfort with Victoria's unnecessary cruelty, though she didn't notice, too busy savoring her moment of power. "How dramatic," Victoria rolled her eyes. "Jasmine, you have work to do. I suggest you return to your actual responsibilities and leave professional matters to those who really understand the subject." That's when Jasmine did something no one expected. Instead of cowering or running away, Jasmine turned to the deaf man and signaled with fluid, elegant gestures. "Sir, it was an honor to help you. I hope you find exactly what you're looking for at this company." The naturalness of her movements made even Victoria stop talking for a moment. These weren't the clumsy gestures of someone who had memorized a few phrases, but the fluent communication of someone who truly mastered the language. The man smiled and replied in sign language, his gestures quick and expressive, and Jasmine laughed warmly before interpreting. He said he rarely meets someone who communicates so naturally and that he has a meeting scheduled with the CEO about an accessibility project. The silence in the lobby became almost palpable as Victoria blinked several times, slowly realizing that this was not just any visitor, but someone important enough to have a direct meeting with Lawrence Reynolds. "Well," Victoria tried to regain control, "I'm sure Mr. Reynolds will arrange for a suitable interpreter for the meeting." "Actually," a deep voice cut through the tension like an axe, "I believe I've already found the perfect interpreter." Everyone turned to see Lawrence Reynolds approaching, his presence filling the space like a magnetic field. Victoria paled instantly, wondering how much of the conversation the CEO had witnessed. "Mr. Reynolds," she stammered, "I was just explaining the company protocols for publicly humiliating an employee who has demonstrated exceptional competence and genuine kindness." Lawrence interrupted, his voice calm but authoritative enough to make Victoria step back. Jasmine remained motionless, but when her eyes briefly met Lawrence's, he saw something that reminded him of his own daughter. The same quiet determination, the same refusal to be broken by small people in temporary positions of power. "Jasmine," Lawrence said without looking away from Victoria, "join me and Mr. Martinez for the meeting. It seems you are exactly the person we need for this project." As the three headed toward the elevators, he added casually, but loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, "Victoria, see me in my office in an hour. We have a lot to talk about regarding leadership and protocols." Jasmine stepped into the elevator, still processing what had happened, though a part of her wasn't surprised at all, because when you grow up being underestimated for your color, your gender, or your background, you develop a special intuition. You learn to identify who truly is power and who only pretends, and you learn to wait for the right moment. What Victoria Sterling didn't know was that Jasmine hadn't learned sign language by accident, nor had she developed serenity under pressure for no reason, and she definitely didn't know that this intern had spent years caring for a deaf younger brother, facing prejudice and discrimination daily. As the elevator doors closed, Jasmine allowed herself a small but meaningful smile, because Victoria had made the classic mistake of insecure people, attacking someone without first finding out who they were really up against, and that mistake was about to cost her dearly. The meeting in Lawrence's office lasted 2 hours and completely changed Jasmine's perspective on the company, for Mr. Martinez wasn't just any visitor, but Diego Martinez, founder of the largest corporate accessibility organization in the country, evaluating Reynolds Corporation for $1 million partnership. Her interpretation was exceptional. Diego signed to Jasmine while Lawrence watched intently, but more importantly, "You understood not only my words but my intentions, that's rare." Jasmine had interpreted faithfully, but inside she was processing a shocking revelation. Lawrence Reynolds spoke sign language, not fluently, but enough to follow conversations. He had understood every word exchanged in the lobby, including Victoria's insults. "Mr. Martinez is right," Lawrence said, his eyes locking on hers. "Your brother must be very proud to have a sister who masters communication this way." Jasmine froze, wondering how he knew about Danny. "I did a quick search," Lawrence explained with a half smile. "Danny Williams, 17, captain of the deaf school's basketball team, full scholarship for graphic design. Your parents each work 2 jobs to support the family, and you? You work part-time at a restaurant in addition to your internship here to help with the bills." The vulnerability Jasmine had carefully hidden for months was suddenly exposed before the most powerful man in the company, but instead of embarrassment, she saw something new in his gaze. Genuine respect. "Diego, I need to tell you something," Lawrence continued, his voice catching. "My daughter was deaf. Sarah passed away 3 years ago in an accident, but she taught me the basics of sign language before. She always said people who truly understand communication don't just translate words, they translate souls." The silence in the office was broken only by the discreet rhythm of Jasmine interpreting Lawrence's words for Diego, who nodded with deep understanding. "That's why this project is so important to me," Lawrence continued. "It's not just about compliance or corporate image. It's about creating an environment where people like Sarah, like Danny, never feel invisible or overlooked." Diego turned to Jasmine and signed something that made her blush slightly. He asked if she would agree to lead the implementation of the company's accessibility program, not as an intern but as a senior consultant. "Senior consultant," Jasmine murmured, barely believing the words. "With a corresponding salary, your own office, and the autonomy to hire a team," Lawrence added. "What do you say?" As Jasmine processed the weight of the offer, 3 floors below Victoria Sterling was furiously tapping her keyboard, drafting emails to every influential contact she had. Her subject line: concerns about improper favoritism of unqualified personnel. If public humiliation had failed, she would wage political war. But Lawrence, anticipating exactly that move, turned to Jasmine. "I need to warn you. Victoria will try to sabotage you. She'll question your qualifications, spread rumors, maybe even set you up for public embarrassment. It's her usual tactic." Diego interrupted with a sharp question that made Jasmine's lips curve into her first true smile of the meeting. He wanted to know if she was prepared for war, and if she had strategies of her own. Jasmine's voice dropped into a controlled, unexpected coldness. "Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Martinez, you assume I'm just a victim here. For 3 months, I let people believe exactly that. But do you think a young black woman from the suburbs could survive in a toxic corporate world like this without developing defensive skills?" Lawrence raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Jasmine leaned forward. "Victoria has been sending derogatory emails about me for 2 months. I've documented every hostile interaction. She speaks freely, assuming her position protects her. What she doesn't know is that I've recorded 47 hours of conversations, comments about interns who don't know their place, about diversity hires being decorative, about instructing others to ignore my requests. Evidence is power, not outrage. Danny taught me that. He records every biased interaction with teachers who underestimate deaf students." She pulled a small recorder from her purse and set it on the desk. The room froze, the weight of her strategy stunning both men. Diego leaned forward, clearly impressed, while Lawrence studied her with newfound respect. "And how do you plan to use these?" he asked. "I haven't decided," Jasmine replied calmly, "but Victoria has 72 hours to prove who she really is. If she escalates, she'll learn she miscalculated badly." Diego clapped slowly, his gestures conveying full approval, while Jasmine added with a small smile, "Victoria doesn't know I speak 3 languages, including Spanish. She's had interesting conversations with Hispanic suppliers, assuming no one understood." Lawrence leaned back, marveling at the sharp strategist he had underestimated. "Jasmine, do you accept our offer?" She met his gaze steadily. "I accept, but on one condition. I want complete autonomy to deal with Victoria Sterling. No interference. She chooses whether this ends peacefully or as a lesson the company will never forget." A slow smile spread across Lawrence Reynolds' face, the same ruthless smile that had built an empire. As he turned to Diego, "I believe we've found exactly the right person to revolutionize our company." The silence in the office was broken only by the discreet sound of Jasmine interpreting Lawrence's words for Diego, who nodded with deep understanding. "That's why this project is so important to me," Lawrence continued. "It's not just about compliance or corporate image. It's about creating an environment where people like Sarah, like Danny, never feel invisible or overlooked." Diego turned to Jasmine and signaled something that made her blush slightly. He asked if she would agree to lead the implementation of the company's accessibility program, not as an intern but as a senior consultant. "Senior consultant?" Jasmine murmured, barely believing her own words, as Lawrence added, "With a corresponding salary, your own office, and the autonomy to hire a team." While Jasmine processed the magnitude of the offer, Victoria Sterling furiously tapped away at her keyboard 3 floors below, drafting emails to every influential person she knew with the strategy of destroying Jasmine's credibility before she could consolidate any position. Lawrence, however, anticipated Victoria's reaction and warned Jasmine that sabotage was imminent. Diego then asked bluntly if Jasmine was ready for war, prompting her icy reply that she had been underestimated long enough. She had recorded 47 hours of Victoria's discriminatory comments, derogatory remarks, and proof of systematic obstruction. "Evidence," Jasmine explained, "is more powerful than outrage," and she had learned that lesson from Danny. The revelation shocked Lawrence and Diego, while Jasmine calmly outlined how Victoria's arrogance had blinded her to the quiet documentation happening all along. Accepting the promotion under the condition of total autonomy, Jasmine prepared for the storm ahead. Meanwhile, Victoria launched her attack by contacting the press and convening a board meeting to accuse Reynolds Corporation of favoritism, but Lawrence and Jasmine had already set a trap. In front of the executives, Jasmine unveiled her recordings, exposing months of racist, derogatory, and toxic behavior, each piece of evidence sinking Victoria deeper until Diego entered with reporters to broadcast her downfall live. Lawrence terminated her on the spot, and Jasmine remained composed, knowing she had turned the tables with strategic brilliance. The press ran headlines about systematic discrimination, and Victoria's career imploded as lawsuits stripped her wealth, reputation, and social standing. 6 months later, Jasmine was leading a thriving division at Reynolds that generated millions, transformed corporate culture, and became a national model for inclusion, with Lawrence praising her impact and Diego declaring, "You didn't just create a program, you created a movement." Companies across the country began copying Jasmine's model, while Danny, now 18, often visited her sister's office with its panoramic city view and a gold plaque on the door that read Jasmine Williams, Executive Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. "Do you remember when I said that one day they would see?" Danny signed with a beaming smile. "You didn't just prove your worth, you redefined what worth means." Jasmine's transformation went beyond numbers and titles. She became a national voice at corporate conferences. Her TEDx talks on turning discrimination into opportunity drew millions of views, and universities competed to have her speak. Mr. Parker, now promoted to security coordinator, proudly told new employees in the lobby where it had all begun. Miss Jasmine changed this company, but more than that, she proved that strategic kindness is more powerful than mindless cruelty. Reynolds Corporation became a national benchmark as Harvard studied Jasmine's program. Fortune 500 companies adopted her inclusion protocols, and the company received international awards for social responsibility. Meanwhile, Victoria had fallen into obscurity, working at a small-town accounting firm with a modest salary that barely covered rent. Occasionally, she searched Jasmine's name online only to be confronted with more evidence of her meteoric success, new awards, accolades, and headlines celebrating the very woman she had once tried to destroy. The worst part wasn't just her own downfall, but the realization that Jasmine had always been exactly what she claimed: talented, strategically brilliant, and morally superior. Her attempts at humiliation had only exposed her own mediocrity. Lawrence Reynolds, transformed by the experience, launched the Sarah program in honor of his daughter, providing scholarships to marginalized youth pursuing communication and accessibility, with Jasmine personally overseeing applications. Do you know what I've learned? Lawrence confided to Jasmine. My daughter did not die in vain if her story helped me recognize genuine talent when I finally found it. Reynolds became a magnet for diverse talent, not because of quotas, but because Jasmine proved that true inclusion generates extraordinary results. Professionals from all backgrounds now competed for positions in a corporation that valued both merit and character. Danny graduated top of his class in graphic design and joined Reynolds' marketing division, signing to Jasmine on his first day. Now we're officially co-workers. Jasmine's revenge transcended personal punishment, becoming a systemic revolution. She had not only taken down a toxic figure, but built a model showing how organizations thrive when they embrace diversity. Victoria had tried to reduce Jasmine to stereotypes, but instead Jasmine became a transformative force who redefined industry standards. The lesson was undeniable. Prejudice not only reveals flawed character, it often creates the catalyst for one's replacement by someone infinitely better. Jasmine Williams proved that the greatest revenge is not cruelty in return, but the transformation of discrimination into fuel for such absolute success that it makes all future attempts at minimization irrelevant. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove our origins never define our destiny, only our determination to turn obstacles into extraordinary opportunities.